What's up YouTube, it's Zapdos TCG here and welcome to another deck profile video on my channel. In this video we're gonna talk about Decidueye featuring Zoroark GX. So Decidueye GX, as you already know him, he has the ability Feather Arrow. Once during our turn we can put 2 damage counters on one of our opponent's Pokemon. Really great because for every Decidueye we can do that every single turn and that adds up to a lot of damage. We also have Zoroark GX, you already know him from the last deck profile video with Righteous Beating. If we have a full bench we are able to deal 120 damage, which is a ton, and we'll be able to 2-shot. But in this particular case, if we have a choice band on Zoroark GX together with some Feather Arrows, we might get the one-hit KOs that we desperately seek. So that is great, and we're gonna talk about this deck in profile here. Okay. First things first, you will need 3 Decidueye GX. Decidueye GX is not that hard to get out nowadays. I know we had Forest of Giant Plants in the previous format, but nowadays it got rotated out and it's even banned in the expanded format, so don't even try getting your hands on the Forest of Giant Plants. This time we're relying on rare candy to get Decidueye out. How do we get Decidueye out? Of course we have a split line here. We have 4 Rowlet, 2 Dartrix, and then 3 Decidueye. I think is a great way of playing Decidueye. You can also add in a 4th Decidueye GX, but I didn't find the room for it just now, but it'll be easier for you to draw into it if you manage to find room for a 4th one. In this particular case, I will be running 3 Decidueye GX, 2 Dartrix, and 4 Rowlet. The easiest thing to get these guys out on play is just using Tapu Lele, using Brigette, and getting a bunch of these owls into play early game. You also want to grab yourself a Zorua because Zoroark GX is your main draw support for the rest of the game. So we're running 3 Rowlet, actually not Rowlets, 3 of the regular Zoruas from Shining Legends, and then 2 Zoroark GX. Hopefully the glare is not that much. Let's just put them over here. There we go. So these will be your main Pokemon. The thing you want to do is first turn Brigette, get out 2 Rowlets and then 1 Zorua, or maybe you want to play it differently, maybe you already have a Rowlet in the hand, then grab yourself 2 Zorua. So you want to fill up your bench with Rowlets and Zoruas. The great thing is, once you get Zoroark GX out, you have the ability trade at your disposal. You can discard 1 card from your hand and then draw 2 cards for every single decision, actually the Zoroark in play. So if you get 2 Zoroark GX in play, you can draw a lot of cards. You'll be able to get these Decidueyes out in no time. You'll draw into those rare candies eventually, and there will be a great thing here. Also, because we're running the Feather Arrows, we want to run 1 copy of Espeon EX. Espeon EX can devolve all the opponent's Pokemon 1 stage earlier, which means, let's for example say you're facing Zoroark GX. You might think it's a difficult matchup because they are running some another variant or something. Well, nothing more is true. You just snipe around some damage with those Feather Arrows and smack around with Righteous Beating, and at the end of the day, you devolve all of their Pokemon and boom, you get the KOs because Zorua only has 60 HP. Espeon will also be an MVP in this deck. Together maybe with a Tapu Koko with a Flying Flip. Let's just put him over here. Flying Flip makes it possible you can put 20 damage on every Pokemon on your opponent's side of the field for single DCE, so everything runs on DCE and a Grass Energy for these. We're not gonna rely on Trickster GX in this particular deck on the Zoroark GX. We're just gonna use Zoroark GX for the trade ability and the Righteous Beating. Since we're running a DCE, Flying Flip will be great early game, spreading around some damage, and then once we get the Decidueye out and we sniped around some damage, Espeon EX will devolve everything. Unless we're facing a big basic deck, like maybe we're facing Boswell or something, then we are not gonna rely on the Flying Flip. We're gonna rely on something else. We're just gonna use maybe the Decidueye, using Razor Leaf, using Feather Arrows, and get the one-hit KO instead of just devolving them. So another great thing I like to play here is the Latios. Let's just put it over here. Latios is also something like Tapu Koko, but it deals 30 damage to the active and 30 damage to one of your opponent's bench Pokemon. This is a great thing because Zoroark GX deals 120 damage with that choice band. It deals 150 damage, and then you can just get those cheapy KOs or late game if they did not use Acerola. You can just use Breakthrough, dealing 30 damage to the active and then 30 damage to the one that only got 30 HP remaining. So that is good if you are ability lock, that is. So ability lock is a huge issue with this deck since we are running Feather Arrow, we're running Trade. That's why we're also going to run 3 Field Blowers, but I'm going to talk more about that in detail. We also run 2 Tapu Lele GX. Yeah, I'm just gonna put my finger here because the glare is way too much on these rainbows, rainbow rares. Here we have 2 Tapu Lele, really great getting your supporter of turn like Sycamore, Brigette early game, and Anne. Also another supporter in here is Mallow, but I'm gonna talk about the supporters next. So these are all the Pokemon you want to have in the deck like this. Other cards you might include maybe Mewtwo from Evolutions if you're having trouble against Pokemon with a lot of energies attached. Let's say Gardevoir GX, or also it deals a lot of damage against Boswell GX. So Mewtwo from Evolutions, also a card to include, but I'm running Latios as the Pokemon of choice. So let's just put all these Pokemon back. That's all the Pokemon you'll need in a deck like this. As mentioned, a 4th Decidueye GX should also be really neat if you find a space for it. Now to the supporter lines. We're running 4 Sycamore. This is just almost standard in every deck. I want to say standard in every deck because the International Champ Tour, Dracliff, I only run 2 Sycamores. So I'm running 4 copies of Sycamore to draw into everything we want. It's the most heaviest draw supporter. Discard your hand and then draw 7 new cards. You might get rid of a lot of evolutions lines, but you also run Rescue Stretcher, so it's not even a problem at all. And also we have the Hollow Hunt GX of the Decidueye GX at our disposal to get cards from the discard straight into our hand. We're also going to run 4 copies of N. This is great. In the beginning of the game, you get a fresh hand of 6, the opponent as well. You can disrupt your opponent at the late game. If they only need 1 prize card or 2 prize cards, put them down to those numbers of cards and bam, out of nowhere you can regain games because Decidueye is really hard to knock out in one blow, and if they are struggling a few turns, Feather Arrow will get the best of them and you might retake games with those. We're also going to run 2 copies of Guzma. Why not more copies? Because we are spreading damage. We are using Feather Arrow turn after turn, and sometimes you need that Guzma, but not always. You also have Hollow Hunt to get back your the Guzmas in the right situation, but most of the times I think Guzmas, you only need 2 copies because you are spreading around damage with Feather Arrow and then finishing the job with Espeon EX in most matchups. Next up, 2 copies of Brigette. Brigette is awesome early game. How many times did you just use your Tapu Lele for Brigette? You can count the numbers of times. Brigette is just so good. We're also running 2 copies to prevent the thing here where you're looking for your Brigette at its price. So we're relying on 2 copies of Brigette, so that chance gets cut down to a little off percentage here because Brigette early game is awesome in this deck. We need setup. Also 1 copy of Mallow. Mallow is just great. Why do I love Mallow so much? Well, with Zoroark GX, you can just put 2 cards on the top of your deck with Mallow and then draw them immediately thanks to the ability of Zoroark GX, the trait ability. So I think it's great getting your rare candy and Decidueye at the time where you want it. That's why we're running 1 copy of Mallow. Also, you can get it back with a Hollow Hunt GX if need be. You might run an extra copy of Mallow just because it's that good. So these are the supporters straight up. And next, we're gonna go to the item cards. We're gonna run 4 copies of Ultra Ball. Of course, Ultra Ball is the best draw Pokemon. You can just search your deck for any Pokemon you want, put them in your hand, bam. You can grab your Tapu Lele, your Decidueye, your Zoroark GX, everything with that. So 4 copies of Ultra Ball. Just to get your evolutions a little bit more quicker, we're gonna add in 2 Evosoda. These Evosodas are great. You'll be able to get yourself that Zoroark GX maybe on turn 3 or maybe turn 2 if you started first. So Evosoda really great. You can also manually evolve and then next turn use your Evosoda to get your last piece of the puzzle. Evosoda is great. You also get our Dartrix. So that way you're running on a slower method, but Rare Candy will be your MVP here. We're running 3 copies of Rare Candy. Rare Candy will make it possible to skip the Dartrix entirely and go from Rowlet all the way to Decidueye GX. So we're running 3 copies. Maybe you want to run 4 copies, but then you're also weak against things like Espeon EX. Remember that. Okay, that's why we're also running 2 Evosodas. Really great. I love evolving on the second turn with Evosoda. Bang, and we get ourselves our Zoroark GX. We are going to run 3 Choice Band, just because we're going to deal extra damage. Zoroark GX limits at 120 damage. You want to add that up to 150, and then with the Feather Arrows get the 1-hit KOs that we want. That's how it works. 3 copies of Choice Band. I couldn't find room for more copies, but Choice Band is great. It also helps out with that Decidueye GX Razor Leaf, which only deals 90 damage, I believe. Let me just recheck that. I do think it's 90 damage with that Razor Leaf. Yeah, 90 damage. You can add it up to 120 damage, and you'll be able to one-shot Lycanroc GXs, which is great. But then again, Feather Arrow also helps you out in that regard. But adding up the damage is always great. Personally, I love it on Zoroark GX. Next up, 3 copies of Field Blower, because Garbage Toxin, it's been around for ages. It's still around. You want to get rid of that Floatstone or Choice Band on the Garbage Toxin in order to regain your abilities. We are running a lot of Pokemon with abilities. We have Feather Arrows at our disposal. We have Trade thanks to Zoroark GX. We want to use those abilities turn after turn, and we want to get rid of opposing Floatstones on Garbage Toxin. With that, you activate your abilities once again if you're up against those matchups. It's always great to get rid of those Fighting Fury belts as well against harder matchups like Volcanion. So yeah, Field Blower, 3 copies. I'm loving it so far. 2 copies of Max Potion. Max Potion is awesome because Decidueye GX is a monster, 240 HP, really hard to knock down if the opponent is not playing fire types, and with that we just heal off all the damage entirely. We have to discard our energies, but most of the time Decidueye GX will not have a single energy attached. Most of the time you attach it to Zoroark GX or DCE, so it's not even a big deal here. You want to keep your Decidueyes alive time after time. Next up, 2 copies of Rescue Stretcher. Rescue Stretcher makes it possible, like in the early game, let's say you have a Sycamore and 3 Decidueye. Sometimes that happens, randomized stuff, you didn't shuffle too well or the opponent shuffled too well, shuffled your deck instead of your own. So anyhow, it can happen that a lot of resources are in the discard pile. Let's say 2 Zoroark GXs are in the discard pile together with the Decidueyes. You can grab everything back with Rescue Stretcher. I know we also have Revitalizer, but Rescue Stretcher is more versatile since we can also grab ourselves a Tapu Lele back, a Zoroark GX back, or maybe a Tapu Koko flying flip. So 2 copies of Rescue Stretcher, loving it that way. Also 2 copies of Floatstone. Yeah, the Floatstone is in this deck. In some situations, you are not needing Floatstone at all since you can rely on Guzma to get out of the active position, but Floatstones are just great on the Decidueye. Decidueye has a 2 retreat cost. It'll be a shame to discard a double Colorless energy just to get out of the active position. With Floatstone, you can easily get out of the active position and promote Zoroark GX once again to deal out some damage with Righteous Beating. So, 2 copies of Field Blower, actually not Field Blower, Floatstone. And that's it for the items. I think the numbers are just fitting well here. I definitely love Max Potion as well in the early game where you did not draw into your DCE. Zoroark got damage. Well, healing him up was never that easy. Or actually it was easier than ever. Okay, now to the energies. 4 DCE and 3 grass energies. That's all. Why are we running such a low count of energies? Well, we don't actually need a lot. The Decidueye has the ability Feather Arrow. With that, we're already dealing damage as it is. So let's say we get out 2 of these bad boys. We're already dealing 40 damage on the opponent's board every single turn, unless they are using Garbage Toxin, but we do have Field Blower to prevent that. And yeah, we want to rely on DCE and on the Zoroark GX in order to get ourselves the KOs. Righteous Beating together with Feather Arrow is really dangerous, and the Decidueye has proven itself really worthy. We have seen it in the London Internationals, a deck like this, so don't sleep on the Decidueye. The Decidueye, once it's out, it's such a dangerous monster, dealing sniping damage every turn. And then you have to be careful, since Espeon EX is still in the standard format. It will devolve all of the opponent Pokemon. Let's say your opponent running Zoroark, Golisopod, it doesn't even matter what they run. If you get enough damage on the opponent's field, you can devolve everything. And that's the deck, ladies and gentlemen. Let me know what you think about this type of deck. Do you enjoy playing with the Stage 2 together with the Zoroark GX? I want to know your opinion about this deck. Have you tested it out before? Have you faced it in a tournament? Everything I want to know about you guys about this deck. Put it in the comment section. I will be sure to reply to the comments. And I will see you guys soon enough with more TCG videos. This was another deck profile. Thanks again for tuning in, and I will see you guys in the next TCG video. I'm out. Peace.